First from our studios in Washington, we have Ray Locker, National Security Editor of USA Today, and Raymond Vickery, former Assistant Secretary of Commerce of the USA. Thank you very much, Ray and Raymond Vickery, for joining us. From Pakistan, we have from Islamabad, Syed Tariq Pirzada, Strategic Affairs Analyst, and Defense Analyst Brigadier Javed Hussain from Karachi. Thank you for coming in. G. Partsadi, former Indian High Commissioner to Pakistan. KC Singh, former Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs. General G.D. Bakshi, editor of the Indian Military Review. And Maruf Raza, our Strategic Affairs Analyst. We've got a big panel, but we also have a lot of time, gentlemen. So we are going to go into this issue in quite some detail. Now, the first point is to our guests in Washington, Ray Locker and Raymond Vickery. First of all, we are very concerned now in India with what is happening there, not just because there are Indians who are trapped, but because of the growing ambitions, reach, and potential of groups such as this to spread terror across boundaries. My question to our American guests is this, that, when George Bush and Tony Blair, they said on April 8, 2003, they said, we are going to build a great nation in Iraq. We are going to help the Iraqi people build a nation that is whole, free, at peace with itself and its neighbors. We will do everything for Iraq, etc., etc. And today, Barack Obama says, sorry, we can do nothing anymore. You go defend yourself. I mean, this problem of the ISIS is essentially an American creation. You allow it to proliferate. And now you say we are going to wash our hands off the problem. How fair is that, Mr. Vickery and Mr. Locker, to you there in Washington first?
Well, maybe I'll go first. First of all, we didn't create ISIS. India and the United States have a great deal in common, a great common interest in terms of preventing and inhibiting Islamic militancy across the globe. And I know that we're working closely on it. The United States has spent $1.3 trillion, about 5,000 lives, and $25 billion in regard to the army of Iraq. So we've made the contribution, and we didn't abandon Iraq. Government asked us to leave in 2011, and we complied with that. Now the question is, what do you do?
Sir, isn't it a fact?
The question is what you do.
No, sir, isn't it a fact that the whole Sunni-Shia schism in Iraq only intensified since the American occupation? Isn't it a fact that the Al-Qaeda found an excuse to intervene in Iraq and launch operations there against the Americans since you left the country in a mess? Why are you hesitating to act now? You must take some responsibility for the mess you've created. Okay, I think Ray also wants to come in. Go ahead.
Oh, I think we are taking responsibility. I mean, we're sending special forces there now. The president on Friday said we're stepping up our use of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft, which are often drones or other kind of, aerial intelligence things. That's going to help us identify targets that will then be taken out by airstrikes. President didn't specifically say that on Friday, but that's where that's going.
So that is
we're
too
going to
little,
work
too late.
hand in hand with the Iraqi government to try to stop it.
That's too little,
Perhaps,
too late.
but it's better than nothing.
No, but you didn't say better than nothing when you entered Iraq. You didn't say whether you were warned about ISIS 5 months ago. What we want to know today is that both America and Britain were warned about ISIS and their increasing reach within Iraq and Syria. And yet your government did nothing, took no corrective action following your withdrawal from Iraq in 2011. I'm sorry, Ray, if I'm being direct, but that's exactly the fact here. You knew it was happening and you chose to do nothing.
Well, first of all, it wasn't me. I'm a journalist and I don't speak for the U.S. government.
I'm just putting your point of view against mine.
What happened in 2003 was... Right. Okay. What happened in 2003 is the United States went in there with the British and other allied nations under what we thought was we now know as false assumption that there were weapons of mass destruction. We took a country that was very fragile, held together by a dictator, and broke it apart, throwing all these forces to the wind. The United States and the military kept it in check for a long time, but the Iraqis wanted us to leave. We created a democracy there. They voted. They asked us to leave. They denied the United States troops the kind of immunity they need to do their jobs. And so we left. Left it in the hands of the Iraqis to take care of themselves, which they have failed to do.
No, Mr. Loka, Mr. Vikri, let's open this up now. I'd like to go to G. Parthasarathi next. The question here is, Mr. Parthasarathi, the American point of view today is we did whatever we could have done. We can't do more. And we deposed Saddam Hussein. My counter to that, as I get you in, is the fact remains America may have helped depose a tyrant like Saddam Hussein, who they call was a tyrant. But Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the leader of the ISIS, is no saint. There is an existential threat which Iraq faces, and today they say we have no moral obligation to intervene beyond a few drones here and there. Mr. Parthasarathi, is that acceptable?
Well, I don't know. I can't speak for the Americans. But I think what is important is for us in India to understand that there are a series of Islamic radical outfits across the world. For example, you're talking of the Islamic state of Iraq and the Levant. Now, that includes Syria. But in Syria, there is yet another al-Nusra front. Now, this Islamic state itself is highly divided. You have radicals, you have Saddam Hussein's remnants. It's a pretty diverse force. You go to Somalia, there's the Al-Shabaab. There's Boko Haram in Nigeria. There's Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula in Yemen. You have groups in Mali. And the most dangerous, as far as I'm concerned, is the International Islamic Front for Jihad against Jews and Crusaders, founded by Osama bin Laden on February 24th, 1998 in Kandahar. That front included the Taliban, the Al-Qaeda, the Harkatul Jihadul Islami, the LET, the Jaish-e-Mohammed, the Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan, the East Turkestan Front in Xinjiang. This was a federation which came together in Kandahar. They're still there along the Afghan-Pakistan borders. And my view is the Pakistanis have been rather selective in dealing with them, but though they have mounted a very firm military operation, which is selective.
Sure,
it spares the Haqqani group, and it spares the Mullah Omar.
So, but who created the Haqqani group?
And certainly it spares their
Mr. Parthasarathi, my question is, of course we can question the Pakistanis, for what they have done, or rather should I say not done. But who created the Haqqani group? Did the Americans, did the CIA not create the Haqqani group?
The Haqqani group was created jointly by the CIA and the ISI during the Afghan jihad against the Soviet Union.
Absolutely. And so
that's the reality.
So that's the point here, isn't it? That's the point here, that the Haqqani group is completely an American creation. He was an American creation. The CIA helped the Haqqani along with the ISI build their capacity. That's the writing on the wall which we are not seeing.
That's there in every book now.
Well, if that's in every book now, who is answerable for the situation? The Americans create the mess and they go away and they say, we can't do anything more about it.
Initially, it was an opportunistic alliance to get rid of the Soviets. The whole thing has backfired. It's spread across the world. I think Hillary Clinton, just a minute, Hillary Clinton has told the Pakistanis, if you grow snakes in your backyard, it's not going to bite only your neighbor.
Sir, I'm sorry, Mr. Parthasarathi, but many of these snakes were fed by the Americans. I mean, you know what American officials have said today?
To start with, yes. Even today, the Al-Nusra Front and the ISIS is funded by Qatar, which is an American ally.
No, so this is the strange situation. Since we are talking about how the Pakistanis are hands in glove with the terrorists, point I make, Americans to the CIA and with the help of Pakistan grouped the Mujahideen in Afghanistan that fought the Soviets. That move backfired, but the Americans never understand, you see. The Americans never understand. Mr. Parthasarathi,
May I add just one thing? The Americans used Wahhabi Islam to finish off the Soviets. The extremist Salafist element not only turned against them, but have got into a Shia-Sunni conflict across the Islamic world.
And there is a thesis to saying today that whether it is India, Afghanistan, and dare say Brigadier Javed Hussain, let's get you in, or even the Pakistanis who will pay the price for American strategic opportunism in this case.
You see,
Yes, Brigadier Hussain, that is to you.
you see, when the Americans went into Iraq, they were able to achieve the objective set for the invasion. They destroyed the Iraqi army, raised a new army, handed over the security of the country to this new army, established some sort of a democratic system, and put politicians in various places. That army, raised by the Americans, has collapsed. This is precisely what is going to happen in Afghanistan. It was a similar objective. Destroy the Taliban, they were unable to destroy them. The Taliban escaped when the Americans went in, to emerge a few months later as a formidable guerrilla group. They are now leaving Afghanistan, after handing over the security to the Afghan National Army. And after the departure of the Americans, there is going to be a civil war. The Taliban are not going to give in. This army will collapse. So you see the similarity between Afghanistan and Iraq. You come to Pakistan, we have the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan operating not only in FATA. FATA happens to be the hub, but they have sleeper cells in almost all the urban areas of Pakistan. The moment of truth has arrived. The Pakistan army has gone into North Waziristan. The ground offensive is yet to unfold. Simultaneously, operations are taking place in all the urban areas to unearth the sleeping cells and wipe them out.
Too late, too late.
Tehreek-e-Taliban.
Too late, Brigadier Hussain. Too late. Your moment of truth has come too late. Your moment of truth.
Better late than never.
Sir, your moment of truth has come too late. You should have seen through the American designs earlier. The pretext of going to war in Iraq was the hunt for weapons of mass destruction. Were there any weapons of mass destruction found? No. And today, what we see today is... No, sir. Why didn't you see through the American designs? Why didn't you see through the... Why did you become pawns in the American game? Why did you become pawns in the American game? General Bakshi wants to come in. General Bakshi.
I haven't finished.
I wish to point out to the Brigadier that they rented out their territory so enthusiastically for the crusade against the Soviet Union, and subsequently they welcomed the Taliban. Where is Mullah Omar? He is in Quetta. Where is Haqqani in the Northwest Frontier Province? Where is, in the FATA? Where is your Hekmatyar? He is in the Northwest Frontier Province. The entire Taliban military grouping has been sheltered by Pakistan. So, this very self-congratulatory note that the Afghan army is going to be destroyed. I'm sorry, you have a major role to play in the destabilization on the region. But, Arnab, apropos the American intervention,
yes.
I just wish to point out one thing. Afghanistan was the biggest blowback on intelligence operations. The Americans believed that the Mujahideen would only direct their energies against the former Soviet Union. I think they came back to haunt them in 9/11. The same thing is being repeated time and again. Now the unfortunate problem now for the rest of the world is, the Americans have cut off their dependency on Middle Eastern oil. They are taking no more oil from Saudi Arabia.
So they don't care for the
people.
people.
So their stake in this region is very low. Their stake in the region has gone even lower than it was before. And the fact of the matter is that they
I need our guests from Washington back into the debate, please. General, let's hear it.
Let's
hear it. Let's hear it from our guests in Washington. I'm coming to you, Syed Tariq Pirzada, coming to you, Maruf, and coming to you, KCC. But this is a fairly straightforward argument here. Ray Locker and Raymond Vickery. The pretext of going to war in Iraq was the hunt for weapons of mass destruction. There were no weapons of mass destruction found, and what we see today is a result of your country having occupied Iraq on a false pretext, on a thoroughly false pretext, and now at a time when forces inimical to the people of Iraq and the rest of the world are occupying territory in the country, you effectively turn around and say Iraqis must defend themselves, and you say that, oh, we are going to help you because we'll send some military advisors and drones to help the Iraqi army retain ground. I ask you today, so is there any moral strength, Mr. Vickery, to that argument? Are you yourself convinced of that argument?
Well, there's no moral strength to that argument. I think it's absolutely absurd to say that the United States is responsible for the problem of Islamic militancy around the world.
Well,
Islamic militancy is around everywhere, not just in Iraq, but you've pointed out all the places. It's in India, it's in Pakistan, it's in Somalia, it's throughout the Middle East. We didn't create that problem. That problem is one that has arisen from Islamic militancy. And India, the United States, moderate Muslims, they be in Pakistan, the people of Israel have all a common interest in going forward and doing now. Don't just ask the United States to step in and solve the problems of the world.
No, Mr. Vickery, may I ask you today, you remember what Peter Thompson, who was the Department of State Special Envoy and Ambassador to Afghanistan in 89 to 91, he spoke to your TV channels and he was asked, did the CIA build the capacity of Haqqani? He said, yes, the CIA, built the capacity of Haqqani. Who is responsible for Islamic terrorism? Did your country have no equation with the Al-Qaeda before the Al-Qaeda went out of hand? Did you not build the Mujahideen before the Mujahideen groups in Afghanistan went out of hand? Did you not do business with Haqqani before they went out of hand? And even today, why do you refuse to intervene with the ISIS? Why do you not investigate what links your Saudi friends have with the ISIS? Why is Saudi Arabia silent? Why do your allies not speak? Sir, take a principle. If you want to solve the world's problems, Mr. Vickery, you must remain engaged. You can't have a short-term solution. You go in and come out. You must remain engaged.
Well, we don't want to solve the world's problems. The world is going to have to solve some of its own problems.
Then why did you get into Iraq in the first place, saying we are going to restore democracy to the people of Iraq? Did the people of Iraq invite you to do that? They did not. You chose to come in, and you also said...
I'm not one who's defending the Iraqi invasion.
But the Americans did, Sir. George Bush...
This administration
Sir, George Bush said that we will...
what do you do going forward, rather than simply looking backwards and trying to point fingers at somebody else?
Sir, George Bush said, we will defend Iraq's resources. We have the patrimony of the people of Iraq, which should only be used for their benefit. Today, the country is being run over and you're flying off. Let's get others into the debate. Let's get Maruf Raza back to the debate. Maruf, do you accept the American position?
Not at all. Let me just put it in chronological order. The American distinguished guest would continue to argue that A, they never created the Al-Qaeda and various groups like that. B, they have no responsibility now for the mess that exists. But please look back in time. The entire initiative against American presence in all the Islamic lands led to the creation of the Al-Qaeda, which then got energized, which got supporters, and which went for the Americans, culminating in 9/11, and which then led to the American involvement under various dubious arguments in Iraq and Afghanistan, Both were the wrong countries to intervene in. They went into Iraq because their Arab flunkies and allies told them go and destroy a stable Iraqi regime which is a threat to the monarchies in the Arab world. Now let me tell you the state of play in Iraq. If America says it can do nothing, I don't buy that argument. Just by their claiming that they're not going to do nothing is emboldening and strengthening the resolve of the ISIS, which is now going for the jugular vein in Baghdad. The Americans can provide a certain amount of feet on the ground by providing leadership to the Iraqi army, which their flunky Maliki, who was put by them in Baghdad, has purged the professional Iraqi army of proper leadership by creating a sectarian divide. So today the Iraqi army, though well equipped, is ill-led and therefore is unable to fight the jihadis who are much smaller in number. The second thing is, it is many Arab allies of America that have funded the ISIS in Syria, including the European Union. Today it is with that money, that funding, that encouragement, they're going for a run in Iraq. What is the implication for the world? The implication is that once they establish a stronghold and a state in Iraq, they're going to first destabilize the Arab world, which will impact on oil prices for us and not for America, which is floating on shale gas. And the second thing is, they're going to use that as a base to attack America and its allies across the world. If America doesn't intervene now, they're saving themselves a few lives. But in the long term, it's going to be another catastrophe, which in a sense is their own creation. So please understand, if the Americans don't understand that, it is a joke, because you have the largest number of think tanks in Washington, and you're still not able to think.
The ISIS is simply a creation of American nonchalance. They have looked the other way. I have innumerable data out here about the warnings the Americans received. I mean,
because America is looking the other way. Because America is looking the other way, the ISI knows they're not going to get a kick in the butt.
Well,
and there is nobody else. The Arabs can't ever get their act
Our question
together.
tonight.
They have been paying the Americans for generations.
We take a 1 minute
by buying
break.
American weapon systems. That America will provide stability to the Arab world. Today, America has taken their money, but it's not providing them stability.
And by the way, today, Mr. Vickery and Ray Locker, this is not enough. The Americans cannot today project Islam to be a religion of violence and get away with it. It's not. You can't say Islam is some kind of religion of violence. The problem is Islamic terrorism. The pertinent question to ask is, what have you done to stem the growth of this terror in Iraq, and why are you washing your hands away following your withdrawal? You realize the gigantic mess that you have left the world in. I'm taking a 1 minute break. I can see Ray, you want to come to the debate. 1 minute break. I'm going away only for 60 seconds. Back on the debate. KC Singh, don't go away. Tonight, the debate on the Newshour focuses on American, I'm not saying complicity, but America looking the other way. I know, Ray, I said I'll come back to you, but let's hear from KC Singh, former Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs. Why did the Americans know and do nothing, KC, in your view?
Thank you, Arnab. I would have gone to sleep waiting.
Sorry.
Except the noise level was quite high. I really don't know what we are talking about. If the intention is to impale the Americans, I think they do a fairly good job themselves. If the intention is to look forward, as Mr. Vickery said,
no, why do you say impale the Americans?
The question is that Americans have done enough to themselves to discuss, and to Obama, when he was fighting the election, he did have enough criticism of Bush. He called Afghanistan a war of choice. He called Iraq a war of choice, and Afghanistan a war of compulsion. So he knew there are two different wars, that they had made a mistake. So it serves no purpose
to go
on repeating the past. I've come in after a long time. Let me finish my argument.
I just want to add one thing.
I've heard everything.
Casey, just one small counter to it. I just want to get this out of you.
You add it, then I can't make my argument. I've listened for 30 minutes. You must allow me to make my argument.
Just a short point.
If it doesn't fit into your scheme of things, then don't invite me.
No, Casey, don't get upset. Don't you feel the Americans have a propensity to repeat the mistakes over and over again?
Listen to a counter thesis. You must listen to a counter thesis. You cannot have one thesis. Things can't be black and white.
No, it's all. Don't get touchy about the Americans. Please go ahead. Support them as much as you wish.
No.
I'm not touching about the Americans. I'm touching about untruth being pandered simply to emote.
So what is
Because
the
that is not the truth. The Americans left in untruth is the Americans left Iraq in a relatively stable condition in 2011.
Yes, okay. Really?
They handed it to Maliki, who screwed up. Now just listen to me. After that, what are the mistakes that were made? The mistakes were that there was something called Arab Spring. Arab Spring came and upset the equation in Syria. The problem that you are seeing today is they managed to kill Zarqawi, they managed to kill the Al-Qaeda in Iraq. But what has happened is it shifted. What the Prime Minister of Iraq allowed was Iranian interference and the Gulf interference. The American mistake is that they were sat on the sidelines, allowed the Gulf monarchies and Iran to fight each other in Syria.
No, Casey,
the problem is not what happened in Iraq.
Just a simple counter question.
Problem is what happened in Syria.
Can I ask you something? Just explain one thing, and just explain one thing.
No.
Tell me, no, one second. Just explain one thing. Why is it, I don't understand, I don't understand. Why was it so important for America to go after Saddam, but not important to go after Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi? Just explain the logic of it.
Listen,
yes.
I'll explain it to you.
Yes.
Going after Saddam as a mistake is well documented.
No. I'm asking. You can't have one approach towards one and one towards another. I don't understand.
They made a mistake. I'll tell you. No, I'm saying that they concede they made a mistake.
No, they don't.
They made a mistake.
No, 1 second.
In going after Saddam Hussein. So what do? We keep repeating it.
I'm 1 second.
We can keep repeating it.
Casey, 1 second.
Or do we learn? Where do we go from there?
Casey, 1 second, please. Just understand one thing, Casey. You see, let's go today, let's go with a few facts and ask ourselves a few basic questions, right?
I'm giving you the facts.
No, 1 second. The fact is the second question. Second question to you is
Iraq was stable when it was handed over.
Casey.
The Sunni middle had joinined in.
Casey,
they put the pieces together. Kurdistan had got semi-autonomy.
Casey, just answer.
The country was as together as you can make it.
No, 1 second.
Yeah.
So you are saying
the
Americans... I understand what you're saying. Americans have done a terrific job. Fine. Suppose I take your argument, Americans have done a terrific job.
I didn't say terrific. I did not say terrific.
Well, you said they have done a very good job.
I said they left it as...
So here's...
No, I said they left it as functional. It was not a destabilized Iraq. They held an election.
Casey,
they had a government elected.
Casey,
Shia, Sunni and Kurd.
Casey, I tell you one thing. Just one
Shia, Sunni and Kurd were working together.
Casey, listen. Casey, please remember one thing, If I don't praise the Americans and I don't agree with your view, doesn't mean we are trying to impale them either. However, my question to you is very simple. If you hear it, please tell me, Mr. Casey Singh, since you feel they've done a terrific job, there is concrete information.
I never used that word. That's your word. That is your word. Don't put it in my mouth.
There is concrete information.
But
there is concrete information, Casey.
They left. Listen, they left.
No, 1 second, Casey. Remember.
Listen, there is.
You see. Just hear this, Casey. Hear this, Casey. It's all right.
2011.
No, Casey. Just hear this, please. You just hear me for a minute.
I'm saying that
they
had elections. For God's sake.
Casey, please remember one thing.
They had elections.
There was information
and Kurd voted.
Remember this, Casey. There's concrete information.
Will you please answer this? In Saddam's land, they had elections with 3 ethnic groups taking part in a government.
I'll tell you one thing, Casey. You have a lot of faith in America's... No, 1 second. You have a lot of faith.
I am not saying that.
Which I find touching in America's ability to conduct elections in other countries. I don't have that faith, Casey. I think America has no business trying to conduct elections in other countries. You may think they do a great job. I think they don't. Maruf wants to counter you. Maruf.
No, we've gone off the subject.
No, we haven't. We're right on the subject. America knew what ISIS was doing. America did nothing.
You're not letting...
No, America knew what ISIS was doing. The intelligence information was there. They did nothing.
What did I say? What am I telling you? I said, that's precisely what I said. What we need to point out is that Obama's... No, you're not letting me finish my argument here. That Obama sat on the sidelines when the war started in Syria. It is not Iraq here.
Well, you don't need to go back that long.
Then the Gulf kingdoms and Iran conduct a proxy war there.
Casey,
that is where Obama's mistake is.
Casey, you just need to ask.
The mistake is not in Iraq. That is what I'm pointing out to you.
Casey, please, let's be reasonable. Let's hear another point of view. Even the Kurdish intelligence says we gave all the information to the Americans. We gave it to their military planners. It fell on deaf ears, and you know this, Casey, unless you want to now be like not be realistic, that the Americans act when they want to act. The Americans don't act when they don't need to act in their own interest. They don't pretend to be in the world's interest in the first place.
Because
Maruf wants to counter you. Maruf.
Yeah. Let him come.
Mr. K.C. Singh, sir.
I want to come in.
One, that you say that the Americans have no role in Iraq. They put Maliki out there. They've allowed Maliki to purge the army of professional leadership.
Where did I say
They've
role
allowed Maliki to create a culture of sycophancy. Sir, please hear me out. They've allowed him to create a culture of sycophancy. They've allowed him to do away with any worthwhile Shia opposition to him in the political system. And then you say that the Americans have had no role. Maliki is as much their crony as Karzai was in Afghanistan. And so why is it that America considers it important? Please hear, sir. Why is it America considers it important to have an election in Iraq and not in Saudi Arabia, not in Kuwait, where they went in the first place into Iraq to have democracy in Kuwait? Why not elections elsewhere in the Arab world which pay the bills for America, which buy cheap weapon systems from America, which sell oil to America? All that is because America did not want a counter to the monarchies. And now Obama saying that he doesn't want to put his feet on the ground in Iraq is emboldening the ISIS, which America's allies in the European Union funded, other than countries that you have only mentioned, such as Qatar and Kuwait. So basically, America has had a role to play in the current situation in Iraq. Yes, it's a consequence of not having imposed the red lines in Syria, which Obama promised.
Opening the debate up to also not excluding our guest from Islamabad, Syed Tariq Pirzada, please. Syed Tariq Pirzada, before that, please.
For the Arab world.
Syed Tariq Pirzada.
I can't hear a thing because there are so many people talking at the same time.
Go ahead, sir. You've heard the debate.
I don't know what to say. You have to put a question to me.
My question is very simple. You look at all the statements. You look at Mike Morrell. You look at the House Intelligence Committee in the US, Mike Rogers, his comment. You look at all the comments in the media and you realize only one thing, that there were repeated warnings to the Americans about this group that is going to create trouble. They did nothing. Today, my question to you, Mr. Pirzada, even though you like the Americans very often and you are on their side tonight, would you say America has nothing to contribute to the situation in Iraq and that the people should be left to defend themselves?
Well, you know the character of American foreign policy, that is a history of shame, that is a history of indifference and it's a heartless foreign policy. It has no moral ground. You know, there was no terrorism in Iraq. When Saddam was there, you may not like him. They dismantled the Iraqi army. They conquered that country, divided that country into a Shiite, Sunni, and of course a Kurdish Iraq. The division is complete. Number one. Same happened in Afghanistan. There was no role of Afghanistan in 9/11. There were 16 Saudis and 3 Egyptians. No action was taken against those 2 countries. So that shows where America stands. Look at the role and the character of America in Ukraine. In Ukraine, under the Budapest Agreement, they were bound to guarantee support for the this government in Ukraine in times of trouble. But they have betrayed Ukraine and they took all the weapons, nuclear and conventions away from them. And here we are watching the Americans say that, look, the military option is off the table, but we'll do something, we'll take some economic sanctions. So basically, America has no moral ground. It's a shameless foreign policy.
I want Ray Locker to respond to Tariq Pirzada from Washington, please, Ray Locker. So Ray Locker is responding to you.
Just a second.
Please hear him. We have a few minutes on the debate. I want a response from the Americans, please.
Let me just say one thing about Pakistan. You know, the Indian bureaucrats have no morality at all. They are typical, dishonest, and cowardly people.
All right, you can have your go at Indian bureaucrats later, but let's hear it from the Americans, please. Thank you very much. The fact is the ISIS has abducted Indians and we know Indians are being targeted. And please understand, sir, Please listen to the American point of view. They're responding to you now.
I can't understand why
Americans have a point of view
Mr.
of
Pirzada
aggression.
is obsessed with India. We are talking of Iraq.
Listen.
They are on two sides of the world, Mr. Pirzada. Don't bring India into it.
Americans have a point of view which is one of aggression, one of total.
I think it's
totally
opportunism is the
occupying
better
foreign
word.
lands, destroying them.
Let's hear from Ray Locker
That's the
responding to you,
problem.
Mr. Pirzada. Yes, Mr. Locker.
I want to come in.
Mr. Locker, please first. After that, Brigadier.
All right. Everybody's complaining about the United States aggression, yet at the same time we want the United States to do something about ISIS in Iraq. Which way do you want it? Do you want us to be aggressive or not aggressive? The fact is what's going to happen is we're going to go there, we're going to take out the ISIS, and we're going to try to prod them to do something differently.
We want you to take responsibility if you are taking responsibility, and if you're not, we don't want you to claim that you came in to take responsibility. GD Bakshi responding to you. GD Bakshi is responding to Ray Locker.
We're going to take responsibility, and India is going to help us, and that's the way it's going to be.
Pakistani friend, that the biggest lackeys of the Americans, the biggest lackeys of the Americans in this part
Mr.
of the
Bakshi,
globe have
India
been
is the biggest lackey
they have been
of Americans
in
of the continent and around the world. You guys have no character either.
Don't go off.
You bowed before the United States. You bowed before the United States on the issue of nuclear issue. You bowed before the United States on the issue of education. Look what you were discussing earlier today.
My question is,
come on,
my question is, no, one second, please, gentlemen. My question is today, I want to go to G. Patsati. Mr. Patsati, KC Singh makes a point, let's look ahead. My point is, let's look ahead, but how can you ignore the fact that the American government was warned by American intelligence agencies about how the Maliki government in Iraq was alienating a certain community, what was happening? The Americans waited on it. They were told about the intelligence inputs. They waited on it. Is that not something that needs to be looked at, Mr. Patsati, in the present context?
I want to come in, Arnab.
Everybody makes mistakes.
Let Mr. Patsati
Let the
come in.
brigadier come in,
Mistakes.
No. If the brigadier wants to, I have no problem.
No, go ahead, Mr.
Please go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, Brigadier, go ahead. He's let you go.
Look, why are you discussing history? What is done. You need to move towards the future. What should be done? Now, if you know, there are dozens of Shiite militias, fully armed, partially trained, ready to take on the ISIS. Now, what the Americans can do, obviously, don't expect them to send boots on the ground. They will not do that. They have these observers. These observers should provide the required leadership, which the Iraqi defense forces are lacking. But what should be done now to finish off the ISIS is to provide air support to these dozens of militias and the remnants of the Iraqi army to turn the situation around.
No, one sec.
It can be done.
Is that, Mr. Patsati?
It is not a global threat.
Mr. Patsati,
and
is that...
India is not on the radar.
1 second, Mr. Patsati.
It is not a global threat. India is not threatened.
Well,
Pakistan was.
You know
the
what
TTP
makes
and ISIS. Let me finish.
Please, what makes the ISIS a global threat is the fact that it has recruited a number of foreigners, including Pakistanis.
You are a moderator. Forget about foreigners now.
The brigadier has been
Forget about foreigners.
Why do we need brigadier from Pakistan to give us advice on ISIS?
No, 1 second. What
does he know about ISIS?
1 second. Mr. KC,
come on, he can't speak for 30 minutes out of 60. 30 out of 60, he's talking. He doesn't
talk
listen.
of the future. What needs to be done?
We can't ever
forget about history. Forget about apportioning blame and responsibility.
Yeah. And biggest lackeys or the Americans have the courage to stand up and abuse them. I mean, this is the most shocking and ironical. You live off their bits, and you have the courage when you retire to stand up in public and abuse them. At least we can do that because we don't live on their bits.
Okay. Point is taken, gentlemen. That's not the debate tonight.
What you are
my
saying
question is, we are
absolute
concerned. One second, Brigadier. Both of you, Casey's made his point of view. He has the right to disagree with you, so with him. My point, which I was actually asking Mr. Parsati, is now what? We are on the verge now. Every day, Mr. Parsati, we hear of this ISIS gaining ground. Please tell me, Mr. Parsati, now what? Are we supposed to watch and let this continue till whatever logical conclusion it will, and hope it's not going to affect us?
I'm afraid
were
we are
as much
having a
glad-
One minute, let Mr. Parsati
If-
speak.
if
please.
that-
Yeah.
Just 30
No, Mr. Parsati,
Brigadier,
please.
I gave you all the time.
Mr. Parsati, please. I want to hear his view. Okay,
I think
please.
one must.
Stop using this word.
I think
Go ahead.
one must understand the present situation in Iraq. When the Iraqi army was disbanded, a large number of the Saddam soldiers joined the various Sunni militias in the Anbar province and elsewhere. When the crisis in Syria broke, a large number of them went across into Syria, across the border, which is populated largely by Sunnis. And they have support there.
Correct.
They have come back and they have routed the Iraqi army, which was badly trained, with about 30% of the Sunnis deserting immediately. The army collapsed. But let's be very clear. What they control is a portion of northern Iraq, with trying to make inroads up to Baghdad. The entire southern Iraq, the entire Kurdish area is not under their control. And even amongst the Sunnis, there are splits between the tribals and this grouping. What you are looking at really is, therefore, this group controlling small areas, including Mosul, which is big. I think even if the Iraqi army can't take them up, the Shia militia will. It will be a bloody civil war in which I believe Western Iraq will remain Sunni dominated, the Kurds will remain where they are, the southern Iraq will become under Shia domination. It's a sad situation. It can only be resolved by a political resolution between all Iraqis, which all of us must try to obtain. No point in going back in history and screaming who did what to.
Analysis. Can I give you a little picture
now I'm
of Iraq?
short of time.
Arnab.
I'm short of time, and therefore I have to stop. But just one question at the very end. Why can't at least globally there be a consensus? I mean, the ISI, if it poses a threat, why can't we nip it in the bud? Why can't we nip it in the bud?
Go to the UN.
Yes.
Go to the UN, nip it in the bud.
Go to the UN, bring in the Chinese and Russians.
And on that, let all countries, India, Russia, US, all come together and at least nip this problem in the bud. Thank you very much, gentlemen. This is not recriminatory. I'm not laying the blame on any one floor, but I'm glad at least we've had an open conversation about this tonight. Thank you very much.